Before we jump into today's conversation, I just wanted to set the scene for you. A couple of weeks ago, I had the absolute privilege of interviewing Kim and Harry Gough, a mother and son team whose story really embodies everything I talk about on this channel. Strength and resilience, and how it's never too late to take charge of your health. Kim only started powerlifting later in life under Harry's guidance as her coach during lockdown. He's a physiotherapist who specialises in osteoporosis prevention, and she's gone from complete beginner to competing at world level. She represents Great Britain. At 67, she's proving that strength training isn't just for the young and the super fit. It's one of the most powerful things that you can do for your health, your bones, your metabolism, and your independence as you age. In our conversation, we talk about the myths that keep people, especially women, away from strength training, the science behind why lifting is so protective for bone health, and Kim's personal experience of discovering strength later in life. It's inspiring and practical, and I think will challenge some of the old ideas that we've all been fed about what aging should look like. I'm Emma Voysey, helping you swap Menno belly for muscle and proving that you don't need calorie restriction or rabbit food or pink dumbbells to do it. So let's dive in. Here's my interview with Kim and Harry Gough. Strength training over 50 and why it's never too late to start. Today I'm joined by Kim and Harry Gough to talk all things strength training. Because lifting heavy things isn't just for gym bros in string vests, it's your secret weapon against midlife spread, creaky joints, and the dreaded bingo wings. Lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me. We're just going to talk today about your qualifications as a physio and specialising in osteoporosis prevention, and also introduce Kim, who is 67, and during lockdown, 5 years ago, Kim started strength training in her garage with Harry as her coach. And tell us a little bit about that and how that started and where you got to today.
So I'm Harry and I'm a physio and powerlifting coach. So the majority of my work now is the treatment and prevention of osteoporosis, which is brittle bone disease. So Mum and I run resistance training classes or strength training classes for those who are at risk of osteoporosis or who have osteoporosis or just want to do it for a bit of fun, really. So alongside my physio job, I do powerlifting coaching, or I'm a powerlifter myself. So I've been competing for about 12 years, and I have a number of different athletes who go on to do the World Championships, British Championships, European Championships, and one of them is Mum.
And whilst Kim started her training, coached by Harry in the garage during lockdown, really the core message that we're getting across today is that safe and structured strength training is vital for health, why it's vital for health and mobility and independence as we age. It's the thing I talk about a lot on my channel. So Kim, you've said before, strength training is absolutely essential for healthy aging. For those that might not know, let's talk about sarcopenia, muscle wastage. Why should we care about it from as young as 30? I mean, 30 seems crazy, doesn't it?
So you start to lose muscle at around age 30, and you lose about 0.4% every single year, but it can be as high as 1% a year. The muscle is
certainly compounds, doesn't it?
Muscle is the foundation for everything that you do in life. It keeps you mobile, it keeps you strong, it keeps you free of disease, it keeps you capable, it keeps you functional. It allows you to do everything you want. You'll live longer, you'll feel healthier, you'll feel better.
Yeah.
So we really need to care about muscle loss at younger ages, but it's never too late to start reversing that process.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I've been seeing with the people I've been working with over the last year or so. It's just incredible, the changes people can make. The changes I've made to my own body, just even, regularly, but small things that you can do regularly. So how does sarcopenia connect to bone health? Because Harry's an expert in bone health as well, problems like osteopenia and osteoporosis. Most people have heard of osteoporosis, but maybe not so much osteopenia.
Yeah. So the two problems. Well, osteopenia is simply the precursor to osteoporosis.
Okay.
So sarcopenia and osteoporosis or osteopenia, muscle loss and bone loss are two sides of the same coin. They are the same condition, just happening at different tissues. They are use it or lose it conditions.
Yeah.
And how they actually interact, well, if you, when your muscles exert a force, they create force, they exert a pressure and a force on your skeleton,
Yeah.
which causes the chemical process to go to build more bone and to keep the old versions of it.
Yeah.
And in people who have osteoporosis or osteopenia, they're getting rid of more bone and not bringing on new bone, but they're also getting rid of muscle and not bringing on new muscle. You know, the body has a constant turnover rate, and when it goes into that negative state where you're getting rid of more and not taking on more, then that becomes a problem, and that can lead into sarcopenia, osteoporosis, osteopenia.
And as I understand, you can lay down bone mass at any age,
At any
just
age.
like you can
At
lay
any
down
age.
muscle
At
mass.
any age. In fact,
And
there's...
I used to think, I
yeah.
think we were led to believe that, or the belief used to be that once you got osteoporosis, that was it really, a pretty...
Yeah, I would say that's
You're done.
that's definitely not true. Unfortunately, those narratives still run true today. There's actually research looking at people at age 90 or older, finding that they actually respond just as well to resistance training as 20-year-olds. They respond at the same rate, as 20-year-olds.
Wow, which is not just incredible, it's just so exciting to know that you can make those changes.
It is.
I mean, we were talking earlier about Captain Tom, who was the old guy that was became famous in lockdown in the UK for walking in his garden, and I remember thinking then, because this was going back a few years when I still believed that aging was inevitable and this is your lot. It was just amazing to me that this man could start walking as he did, but that was just walking. We can do strength training as well. And
Absolutely.
But in order to do that, we need to be eating the right kind of diet.
That would definitely help.
Okay, we're going to go on to that. So the statistics you shared, pretty shocking. Could you talk through the risks for men and women if they don't build and maintain muscle as they age?
So there are many risks. I mean, to put it simply, your risk of premature death goes up by at least 30% if you have less muscle, basically. And there are any number of reasons for that. For example, certain types of cancers, heart disease, lung disease, diabetes, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So the risks are very real and very wide-ranging. Absolutely.
Yeah. And why do you think that strength training is still so under-promoted for older adults? Why is there this pervading belief that it's for young people, and once you're older, there's no hope for you, despite all this evidence supporting it?
I think, unfortunately, there are some really unhelpful narratives. Things like you're going to get very muscular if you start lifting weights. Things like you're going to hurt yourself. In fact, I read a recent paper on this, and there was quite a few interesting themes coming out. And people were, one of the biggest ones was people felt as though they were too weak to do resistance training. I mean, that's like saying you're too unhealthy to eat vegetables. It makes no sense. It makes zero sense. But the good thing that actually came out of that research was that when they asked people if they were recommended by their healthcare professional, would they consider it? And they said yes. So we need to actually be tackling the healthcare professionals and making sure they understand the benefits of resistance training and actually employ that with their patients. That's the most important thing which we can do, and that will start people doing more, I think.
Yeah. Can you explain to the audience what the LIFTMOR study was? Can you just put it in simple terms, and why it's such a game changer for osteoporosis prevention?
So you can look up LIFTMOR. It's LIFTMOR. What the LIFTMOR trial did is, well, it was done in Australia in 2018 in women and then repeated 2019 in men. They took people who had either osteoporosis or osteopenia, and they split them into two groups. So they gave the first group sort of home-based resistance training, tins of beans, repetitions, lots of repetitions, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they gave the other group this supervised, twice a week, half an hour a time, high intensity resistance training, which was, if you want the technical term, they were taking them to 90+% of their 1 rep max. So they were lifting really heavy weights for 5 repetitions or less in certain movements. And they measured their bone density before and then 8 months afterwards. And what they found was that the high intensity group, well, I'll start off by saying that the high intensity group suffered no ill effects, or at least no long term.
And what age group were these people?
Well, if they have osteoporosis and osteopenia, they're going to be at least age 50. But they're probably going to be average age 60, 70, 80, that kind of thing. And I'll start off by saying that the participants suffered no ill effects, because we were worried in the past that giving a patient with osteoporosis a big weight to lift was going to give them a fracture. But actually it doesn't, and it may well be more effective than giving them lighter weights to lift. And so that was why the LIFTMOR trial was really different, and why it was so landmark, is it managed to demonstrate this safety and effectiveness in giving people these bigger loads to lift that we didn't know was safe before.
And they found that the heavy resistance group showed increases in bone density in the lumbar spine 10 times more than the other group.
So the average increase in the lower intensity group, I think in the lumbar spine, was 0.3%, whereas the average increase in the higher intensity group was 3%. So it's 10 times more, basically. So it was a huge...
and that was just over, did you say 6 months?
8 months.
8 months.
Yeah, 8 months.
In such a short time.
It's such a short time.
And they
twice
started
a week.
off low.
And
they started off very low weights and built up.
there's an acclimatization phase. They start off low, teach people the movements just like we do, and then they get them to go heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier, and and they found that it was really incredible results from something like that.
This is really inspiring me. I'm going to start lifting heavier.
The current statistics are that 1 in 2 women will suffer from an osteoporotic fracture in their lifetime.
1 in 2.
I have another statistic. A woman's lifetime risk of a hip fracture is 15%. That's higher than your risk of ovarian, breast, and uterine cancer combined.
And yet and it's something we can change. And yet
it's something we can change. 30%, well, around 20% of people will die within the first year of having a hip fracture, and 70% won't regain full independence.
Yes, I know.
Prevention is key for hip fractures, and that's really what a lot of my job is now down to. It's about preventing these catastrophic, particularly hip fractures.
I mean, they say people who have a hip fracture they're likely to die within a couple of years after a hip fracture. I mean, that's so massive, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And preventing...
that's death. That's not just, people... Things, take breast cancer, for example. We have scans regularly, or these different cancers are checked and scanned for, and yet we're not doing the basic stuff, which is telling people to do some strength training, make sure it's part of everyday life, just like drinking your water is. Yeah,
absolutely.
And there's also a connection between leg muscle size and risk of dementia. And
yes, that's fascinating.
So there's now research coming out showing that muscle size, particularly, which is obviously linked to doing resistance/strength training, lowers the risk of dementia. There was actually a bit of research. I seem to remember it was in. Well, I know that one, but I know there was one in Sweden, and they were looking at what they called ultra fit women versus moderately fit women. And they were finding that the ultra fit women had something like a completely negligible risk of dementia. It was like 80% less or something. So actually, and this was actually quite interesting, because quite a lot of the research, looks at kind of moderately fit people, but not necessarily really fit people. And this was one of the ones that took that and showed that there are still continuing benefits beyond being just regularly fit, basically. But risk of dementia is an interesting one, because it's a problem that's becoming more and more problematic because we are getting older. We're not necessarily living better.
We don't really know first of all, they don't seem to know what causes it, and they don't seem to know how to treat it. All the millions and billions have been spent on drugs for dementia, and they make tiniest difference.
Yeah, tiniest differences.
Even though I think there's quite a scary statistic with dementia and diabetes, isn't there?
Yeah. There are connections there.
There is a connection between, and I think if you have diabetes, your risk of dementia increases
Yes.
a lot.
Well, yes, and I teach a lot about blood sugar and insulin control and how absolutely vital that is. I mean, people think of me as a weight loss coach, but it's not. Weight loss is just one of the lovely side effects of all the other things being in balance. You get things in balance and your weight just normalises and you're the right weight for where you should be. You know, you could take a muscly person and a skinny person or a fat person and a muscly person, but it's not about what you weigh on the scales, it's about your body composition.
No, exactly.
and-
Body composition is more important than total body weight.
And I don't focus with any of my clients on, you know, how much weight have you lost? Because it doesn't matter. It's more about how they're feeling, what they're eating, the energy. Listen to the buzzard.
Paradoxically, people lose more weight when they don't focus on the scales.
Yes.
You know, it's seen as a punishment if you focus on the scales. So
it's a terrible way to go.
It's probably the wrong way.
And I think also there's a need to redefine femininity, and strength should be part of that.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of young girls suffering with eating disorders never actually in their 20s reach that maximum bone density that they need to reach. And so therefore when they come to menopause, they're starting from a low level of bone density
already.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I think things have changed over the last few years, and it's now very, very fashionable to be fit and strong looking. Whereas go back 20 years, early 2000s, when it was the size 0 thing was going on. I mean, I know quite a few people who are still absolutely obsessed with weight and being skinny because of that. It did so much damage. I mean, it seems that now the kids are more interested in strength training, and it's more.
Yes.
It's fashionable to be fit.
It is fashionable to be fit,
and not just skinny.
Yes.
Which is, you know, strong is always should be the goal.
And how empowering as an older woman to walk along the road and feeling strong.
Harry, let me ask you, why do you think there's so much resistance from doctors or even some physios to recommend heavy strength training for older adults?
It's a good question and something that needs to change. Unfortunately, it's because they're convinced they'll do their patients harm.
And
and so therefore they're worried that their patient will go out and have an injury or something along those lines.
Worry.
I mean, it's a relevant worry, but the risk of injury per 1,000 hours of resistance training is about between 1 and 4.
Right.
If you want to put that into context, new runners, the risk of injury is up to 33 per 1,000 hours, and yet the doctor will happily tell you to go for a run or to go for a walk or something along those lines.
And durational exercise is one of the things that I try to steer people away from, because it puts the body into fight or flight mode. It's a stress over a long period of time. There are so many better ways to train than to just run, for example.
And the risk of injury in yoga is between 2 to 3 per 1,000 hours. You know, it's similar to resistance training. So, I mean, the main reason why it isn't recommended more often is because doctors, physios are worried about doing their patients harm, and you know, the first tenet of being a doctor is do your patient no harm.
Yes.
Now, unfortunately, though, by not recommending these things and often recommending against them, they do their patients harm because they don't give them the potential to improve. We have had lots of with Mum and I running our classes for resistance training for osteoporosis, both treatment and prevention. Unfortunately, we will have people who come along and they've said, "Oh, my doctor says that I can't do this movement because I have X, Y, or Z," when we actually know that the research says that they should do them, and that actually that health condition it's fine to do something like this. And it's really sad because it can be hit or miss as to whether or not that person continues to listen to us or listen to somebody else. And so unfortunately we lose people that way. We keep some, but we lose people that way, and that's really sad. So we're affected by that, and it has to change.
Beyond bones and muscles, whole body benefits. Harry, from your perspective as a physiotherapist, how does strength training affect things like balance, fall prevention, and mobility in later life?
It's the be-all and end-all. So, I mean,
The gold standard.
the gold standard, yes. So the World Health Organization recommends that people over the age of 64 do 3 sessions of what they call kind of multidisciplinary exercise, which can include balance training, strength training, and quote-unquote functional exercise. But most of that would be strength training. Balance requires rate of force development, which is power. You know, the ability to create force quickly, to save oneself if one is going to fall over, and enough strength to maintain your balance, maintain your center of mass over the base of support. And so strength training really is the biggest part of that, to be honest. So there's actually research now looking at doing, say, strength training versus doing strength training and balance training, and they find that they give the same results.
Right.
Yeah. So strength training is kind of the be-all and end-all, particularly for balance. Yeah. I mean, there are, balance training would give perhaps similar results, but you get some certain additional benefits with strength training, which would be.
So why not just strength?
So why not do just strength training, basically?
And there's growing research showing that having more muscle mass reduces the risk of dementia, as we were talking about earlier, and even lowers all-cause mortality. So can you unpack why muscle is this great health insurance?
Okay. Find me a reason for dying, and I'll tell you why muscle helps.
So, heart attack.
More muscle, less plaque in arteries, stronger heart, less likely to die.
Cancer.
50% increased risk, 50% decreased risk of dying if you do strength training within the year before your diagnosis.
Diabetes.
More muscle, more sponge for insulin, better blood sugar control, less likely to die.
What about things like autoimmune conditions? Is there any?
Oh, that's a good question. That's actually a really good question. So, one of my friends, I'll give him a shout out, Matthew Brown. So he did his master's thesis on the attitudes of strength training in people who had rheumatoid arthritis, I believe. So rheumatoid arthritis, most of these inflammatory conditions are inflammatory problems, and when the balance of the scales, too much inflammation in the body goes awry, then you can end up with problems like diabetes, osteoporosis, even sarcopenia, etc., etc. Diabetes mellitus.
Mellitus,
And
urine.
But itis means inflammation.
Yeah.
So actually, with a lot of autoimmune conditions, they actually cause these other problems, which can then contribute to the risk of death or risk of being disabled, etc. And actually, what we should be doing is we should actually be recommending that, say, people with rheumatoid arthritis, for example, do strength training more. Because they need to do it more because they have higher levels of inflammation, higher risks of X, Y, Z.
They would argue that they can't strength train because it's too painful. So that's where I would suggest that we change the diet. We take away the inflammation, the things in the diet that are causing the inflammation, the sugars, the seed oils, the highly processed foods, and then the inflammation starts to come down, and then you will be able to strength train. Then you will be able to introduce that.
Yeah, and I think also it's worth mentioning that strength training has been used as a pain reducer in people with rheumatoid arthritis. It's kind of that thing of where I'm too unhealthy to eat vegetables. Where you actually this has been shown to treat pain. I mean, people often say to me they can't do strength training because they can't do squatting because they have knee arthritis. When I see people, I've seen hundreds, maybe even thousands of patients with knee arthritis, and one of the exercises I give them is a squat to improve their pain.
And squatting is one of the things in my program that from the outset I say every time you've eaten a meal, 20 squats, then up to 40 squats. You're only eating, for most of my clients, we aim to go down to eating twice a day because you shouldn't need to eat numerous times a day. You should be able to eat enough to, not to snack all the time. It's getting away from this idea of snacking the whole time. But just introducing that, and some people can't squat, and for some people it might just be there.
That's fine.
But that's, because a squat enables us to get up off the toilet without needing someone to help us when we're 70, because that is the goal, isn't it?
It's a hugely important movement. Coming back to your original question of before we started asking me about all the different diseases, having more muscle will keep you independent, mobile, and capable for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Yeah. And the more you have, the less likely you'll ever have a problem with low muscle mass.
Yeah.
What we talked about earlier, sarcopenia, is both a describer of muscle loss, but it's also a diagnosis. The true diagnosis is sarcopenia dysmobility syndrome.
Okay.
Sarcopenia, loss of muscle, dysmobility, unable to move syndrome, set of symptoms.
Yeah.
It's the reason why people might struggle to get off the ground without holding onto a chair.
Yes.
For example, that's one of our signs of
Yes.
sarcopenia dysmobility syndrome.
And also, is that not a sign of a test that you do, how quickly someone can get out of a chair, and that's a predictor of...
It can be, yes.
Or can you get up off the floor?
Yes.
Unaided and just using your legs rather than...
Yes,
That's another test,
and that's a good
isn't it?
test. There are numerous tests. At my clinic in Exeter, we have these really interesting bits of kit called force plates, where we actually measure people's strength by having them push down onto these plates and do a jump.
Okay.
And that's a great test for sarcopenia. And one that people out there might be able to do is you can go online and buy something called a hand grip dynometer. It measures your grip strength, which is a remarkably good test for full body strength. Now, if you're under 16 in the score kilograms for a woman, that's a problem. If you're under 27 for a man, that's a problem. But the important thing is the higher you are above 16, so mum's score is about 38, she'll never attain 16, ever. The higher score you are, the less likely you are ever to have a problem with it.
That's so interesting. For me personally, before I started this health journey, sitting there at 50 feeling so old and just imagining how dreadful I was going to feel by the time I got to 60, my grip strength had got so weak. It was weakening. I noticed it, and the thing is, we don't notice these little incremental changes. That's how they creep up. But now I'm like I was saying to you, I do pull-ups. My hands are so strong, and they really weren't. I was really so noticeable.
Yeah,
so,
it is. We were on a train the other day going up to Manchester, and a lady taps me on the shoulder and says, "Harry, can you open this water bottle for me?" She didn't know my name. She said, "Sorry, can you open this water bottle for me?"
My name?
Yeah, and so I gave it to Mum, and she opened it.
And she was probably younger than you.
Going back to squats, a chair. If someone is weak and they're literally just standing on a chair,
that's a good
and
one.
we start off with
That's how we start with a lot of people. That's how we
You've got
start.
that protection if you need it.
Yes. And then what we'll do is we'll give them a weight, and they'll stand up, and it's just that slow
gradual progressive overload.
Yes. Beyond the physical, have you seen changes in mental health, confidence, or social connection in people who take up strength training in later life?
100%, absolutely. And I think for me, it's sort of a metaphorical thing in lifting those weights. I sort of feel as I'm lifting those problems off my shoulders, and I feel that I would really struggle with my mental health if I didn't do my training. And as I mentioned before, I walk tall, and I go to my gym. It's a huge gym. And I walk tall into my gym. I'm probably the oldest woman there by about double the age, but I don't feel like that.
Yes.
And I walk along the road. I'm confident. I think, yes, it has huge benefits for mental health.
And interestingly, you started this journey during lockdown when so many people suffered with mental health.
Yes.
And still suffer. Or here we are, 5 years later now, and people are still quoting that, of course, it was the lockdown that changed everything. So you can reverse it.
Mum flirts with all the bodybuilders at the gym.
Oh,
that's
so that's the
great.
real reason. Now it's coming out. Safe and effective strength training at any age. So let's address the common fear that many people think strength training is either unsafe or too hard once you're past a certain age. Women in particular really struggle with this, and they worry about building too much muscle and getting too strong and looking unfeminine. What's your advice for beginners over 50 who are nervous about starting?
Well, I think we've already talked a little bit about the safety. It's safer than doing other sports / activities. So the risk of you hurting yourself is actually rather low, and the benefits always outweigh the risks.
Well, I told you earlier about how I play tennis and I snapped my Achilles playing tennis in a dynamic move. You're not doing those fast twitch dynamic movements. No,
it's very it's what we do is quite predictable. And if you want to look at the injury risk of a sport, you look at the predictability of it. Okay. So, for example, rugby is one of the highest risk sports.
And of course, people have to give up, don't they? They get Simon gave up rugby because
concussions or injuries or
injure himself.
Yeah, I mean, the certain researchers have looked at the forces involved in rugby tackles, and it's up to 50 G's in a rugby tackle. I mean, that's more than a 30-mile-an-hour rear shunt in an average car.
Yes.
You know, and you cannot, as much as you want to, you cannot prepare for that.
Or take skiing. I had so many skiing accidents, myself and friends in the last, as we get older. And sometimes it's not even you, it's someone smashing into you at 30 miles an hour, and it could cause so much damage.
And so you can't plan for that. Whereas when you do what we do, actually you can plan for when you increase and by how much you increase, and the slower you increase by, the safer it is. And when it comes to people worrying about putting on too much muscle, unless you are, if you're a woman in your 50s, unless you are the one in 100 billion, I'm not sure if
Really,
that person has ever existed yet, then you are not going to look like you lift weights.
No.
I mean, Mum, I don't know if you don't.
Well, my parents who this is how I found out about Kim and Harry. My parents have joined Kim and Harry's class, which we're going to go on to talking about. And my dad said, "You'd see Kim." He said, "I've seen her lots of times, just in a dress." He said, "And you should have seen her when we joined the class, how different she looked." He said, "I couldn't believe it." So you don't look, in your normal clothes, you wouldn't even be able to tell that you are so muscly.
No, and I don't think even, with, unless somebody said, "Oh yes, Mum lifts weights," you'd be able to really tell that.
Yeah.
And so the likelihood of somebody who's going to do, a couple hours a week of becoming unfeminine is just impossible. Yeah, it is hard. It is hard. Otherwise, we'd all do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd be looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
And that's not really going to happen.
Well, don't.
And actually, I would like.
Say never.
Yeah. Well, and I'd actually like to say that actually these days, lots of, especially young women, we're changing the tune of what we're saying often.
Absolutely.
And young women love to be bootylicious.
Yes, absolutely. So, they don't want to be size zero anymore, which is great.
They want to look like they've lifted a weight or two in their life. And when it comes to actually doing something about this and how we might go ahead and do something, well, I think simply starting off, if you've never done something like this before, simply finding ways in your life to be more active is a good start.
Yes.
When you
I talk about exercise snacking.
Well, we talk about that with back pain all the time. But
standing up.
Yeah,
I have a standing desk because I don't want to sit down all the time.
Yeah, and simple things like when what we were talking about earlier, when you say when you're eating a meal, before you eat a meal, do 10 squats, and when you finished eating a meal, do 10 squats.
Yeah, when you're brushing your teeth or the kettle's boiling, you can fit in all sorts of little snacky bits of exercise.
And I think we should say that, the gym is not the most intimidating place in the world, although it may seem like it. And
but
actually,
only the first couple of times you go in, if you've got someone holding your hand to show you, for the first few times,
if you seriously want to make big changes, then I would find somebody who knows what they're talking about and have them take you through a routine and stick to it. And if you really do want to make some really big changes, then it might be going to a gym with somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're not sure.
I always say to people as well, because they've worried about X, Y, and Z, and people looking at them and not. No one cares.
No one looks.
No one is looking at you. They're in the gym to do their training. They probably haven't even noticed you.
People are looking at you as much as you're looking at them, which is not much.
Yeah, which is exactly. Yeah. So
Did you want to say something?
Well, we were talking about people and worrying about injuries. I think it might be worth talking about this narrative again of backs and people with their backs and how.
Okay. Well, I'll say this for the camera. having back pain does not preclude you from doing strength training. In fact, it means that you should do it.
You need to do it.
83% of people,
84%.
84% of people will suffer from back pain within their life. And what
And
I
it's
say...
so common. I mean, that's nearly everybody, isn't it?
It is. And what
because we sit so much and we just have this awful posture and all the inflammation.
But what I say to people is, because people will have a bit of back pain and they'll be frightened to do anything. And I say to them, well, does that mean if you hurt your leg, you're not going to walk? And
in lots of cases, yes, it does, unfortunately.
And if you go into Harry's clinic with back pain...
I'll get you doing exercise. Yes, I'll get you doing exercise.
My back was a bit sore this morning. I call it off-roading, away from the way I normally eat because I'm away. We had a big family party. Yes, there was cake. I don't normally eat cake. And this morning, my back's sore. So we went for a walk for an hour and it's
and
not
that
sore
helps.
anymore.
No.
Yeah.
And I had a bit of a headache. That's gone too.
It's about being resilient.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what we talk about here is actually about being resilient.
Absolutely.
And
this is something that I absolutely teach. It's resilience, because that's the game changer, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
So you've emphasised the importance of training in a safe environment. Mm-hmm. What does that look like in practice, and why is proper supervision or coaching so important for people getting started? Maybe you've never done this before.
Mm-hmm. It's important because if you've never done something, it's quite easy to do it wrong.
Yeah.
So I actually had a patient the other week, and I was... we do this at Motion in Exeter. We do this quote-unquote physio MOT, which is where we get people in, we have a look at their strength markers in various different ways, the hand grip strength, the jump strength, various different tests of how strong they are. Yeah, and whether they can get up off the ground. And this this patient, she was going to do strength training twice a week, and the program was set by a physio. Right, but it was this kind of class, and I tested her, and I found that she wasn't horrendously weak, but she was weaker than she should be.
Yeah.
And so,
how old was she?
Well, she's about 70.
Okay.
Yeah. And so what she's doing is actually really good. Yeah. I mean, she's going to do strength training twice a week. She's being very diligent. And I said to her, and I was trying to rack my brains on, why aren't you stronger than you should be?
Yeah.
And so I said to her, so can you tell me about the movements you actually do? And she told me about a number of different gym machines she does.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so on the leg extension, how much do you lift? And she said, 5 kilos. And so I said, okay, on the lat pull down, how much do you lift? She said, 5 kilos. I said, okay, on the chest press, how much do you lift? She said 5 kilos, right?
It was her
and so
favourite
I said, has anyone ever told, and how long have you been doing this for? And she said, a year. And I said, has anyone ever told you to increase those? And she said, no. And that's actually remarkably common.
Because maybe she went to see the physio, she got the program, and that was the last time she saw that person.
Quite possibly. I mean, I think unfortunately it was unfortunately it's worse than that. I think actually the physio takes the class and has them do the different machines but how supervised that is, I don't know. But and whether or not it was ever said to increase the weights, again, I don't know. But I actually went on a home visit to that gym and got her to increase the weights on what she was using.
Yeah.
And that was really important. And she goes, oh, I didn't know that I had to increase it. And it's just the simplest things sometimes.
Yes.
But a good coach will help you understand what you need to do, why you need to do it, and then help you do it yourself.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what you're doing, consider investing the money in it.
Yes.
And the moral of that tale is the progressive overload. And to build muscle, you must progressively overload your muscles, because if you stay at the same weight, the body goes, oh, I can do this. I'll just stay like I am.
Yeah.
So you won't build.
You have to have. There has to be a stressor.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Otherwise, and I say this to people with fasting, because fasting is part of what I teach. It's no good just doing exactly the same thing day in, day out for 365 days a year, because your body gets used to it and there's no stress there anymore. So you lose the benefits. You have to mix things up and change things around. But with weight training, it's just that gradual increase is adding the stress, isn't it?
I think something I say to a lot of people, a lot of my patients, is that you must learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yes.
You must push it a little bit, and the rewards you'll gain are fantastic.
Yeah.
So, but people probably just need that little bit of guidance, and that's why Mum and I take the exercise classes we do, because we know that people need that guidance.
Yeah.
And we have people, we have a 100 club in our classes for a 100 kilo deadlift. People get a prize, and we now have 6 members.
Have you got to that point yet? Can you lift 100?
Mum lifts 160.
Oh, you're way past that marker. Wow, 160.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah,
that's a lot, isn't it?
It's over 2 men. 2 average men. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
2.5 of me.
And then I
Gosh.
had someone say to me the other day, what happens after 100? And
110.
Well, then we go to 105. Yes. We can go up. So the World Health Organization has guidelines for how much strength training we should do. Can you explain those recommendations and why frequency matters?
Okay, so the World Health Organization recommendation on strength training for those under 64 years old is twice a week, and for those over the age of 64, it's 3 times a week. So why is that? Why is it more for those over a certain age?
Because I guess people deplete, and maybe it takes more as the body gets older.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, possibly. It's also obviously the risks of heart disease, dementia, cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, diabetes. It all rises with the older you get, and therefore you need to do more to further reduce your risk.
Okay.
And the reason why frequency matters is because it allows you to get more in. So and obviously one needs to rest between. 3 times a week is about every other day, and so that day between allows you to rest and recover, and doing more frequency allows you to get more in.
What role does recovery, rest days, stretching and mobility work play in avoiding injury and seeing progress?
I love this question. Mum may give a different answer to me when it comes to this. So I'm going to give you the physio nuanced answer. So rest is obviously important. If you were to overstress, people I often use like a stress cup. Have you ever heard that analogy before?
No.
So, if your rest and recovery is allowing you to pour liquid out of your stress cup, whereas when you're pouring it in, you're stressing, whether that be physical stress, emotional stress, mental stress, etc., etc. And so you need to balance the amount coming out of the cup than you do going into the cup. So obviously, if you're going to be training 7 days a week, 3 hours a time, but then not recovering well, then you're going to overstress and probably end up with an injury or something else along those lines. And when it comes to mobility and stretching, the research is rather more murky. So stretching probably reduces the incidence, the risk of muscular injuries, but whether or not it reduces the risk of other types of injuries is a little mobility work is very much similar to stretching, really. There are certainly health benefits, and it's not going to do you harm. So we would recommend people do it, but the most important thing is to do the strength training bit as well as the mobility and stretching bit. Often people will, their only form of exercise will be, say, yoga, for example. Now, yoga has some elements of strength training in it, but a lot of it is just stretching. And although stretching is good for you, it doesn't replace the strength training bit.
No.
I think there's an interesting thing as well, that women recover quicker than men.
Okay.
So
I didn't know that.
I train 6 days a week, because as a woman I can recover much quicker than Harry, who would train 5 days a week.
Yeah, I mean, I think so often it's down to the individual, but there is preliminary research to suggest that having higher levels of estrogen is protective against fatigue.
Okay.
So women can often take more load and more frequently.
How does that align with women who have reached menopause and their estrogen's depleted?
We don't know.
And the adrenals have taken over the job.
We don't know. So there's little. There is little.
HRT come into it.
Maybe. I mean, there is little research when it comes to this area. I mean, to be honest, women have not been studied well anyway. Women have not been studied, and they certainly haven't been studied well in strength training in postmenopause. We don't know. Okay. We don't know. I mean, it's
such a new thing for women to. I mean, new in the last 20, 30 years that women would do this anyway.
I mean, exactly.
It's just gaining in popularity, but it was always the department of men, wasn't it, strength training?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think something that's worth mentioning is that sometimes the total amount of especially when it comes to what Mum and I do, total amount of weight you lift maybe leads to being more fatiguing. So, for example, I can deadlift 300 kilograms. So if I do 300 kilograms, is that going to fatigue me more than Mum doing 160?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe. And men tend to be.
Everybody's completely individual.
Yeah, everybody's an individual, but the research comes from a guy called Greg Nuckols at Stronger by Science, and he did his
Knuckles,
and he did his PhD thesis, I believe, on women in strength training and being capable of taking more load more frequently, and they're better adapted to deal with the stresses of that. So there's a possibility. Mum trains 6 to 7 days a week, partly because she's a world-class athlete and partly because she could take more. I think I'd die trying to train more than I currently do. Okay. Yeah, my stress cup would be overflowing.
Yeah. Just on the World Health Organization question and their guidelines for how much strength training we should do, how does that align with your personal training principles? Same sort of trajectory, same sort of quantity, or do you...
Yeah, so the World Health Organization is extremely vague when it comes to what they even define as, say, strength training, for example, and the NHS is rather vague as well. For example, the NHS's guidelines on quote-unquote muscle strengthening exercise mentions carrying shopping bags. Whether or not that qualifies as true strength training. Again, it's something that people should do. It's something people should do. Whether or not it qualifies as true strength training, I'm not 100% sure, but it's something people should do.
It's something that maybe they can do that when they weren't doing anything
Oh yes.
So park the car a bit further down the car park and carry shopping, just as some way to start.
I mean, that comes back to finding ways of being more active, which is really good.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to what Mum and I do, which is this very high intensity strength training, it's probably possible to get more benefit out of doing less of that, rather in the same way that you may well get more benefit out of doing less sprinting than you might doing a long distance run.
Yes.
So, it's probably quite similar. What Mum and I do is we offer 2 times a week in an Exeter, we offer 3 times a week for strength training. In terms about what we do personally, it goes well beyond what the World Health Organization recommends.
And a lot of our ladies only do once a week, and
they get incredible benefits.
And they do.
Yeah. So, I mean, the gold standard is certainly 3 times a week for those over the age of 64, but doing something is better than doing nothing. And actually doing something that's quite intense may well be as good as doing more.
Yes.
Which is just the same as...
Train smarter, not harder.
Potentially. Yeah, potentially.
Kim, you use protein shakes as part of the way to get enough protein in to perform and to do what you do. So whilst I recommend 1 gram per pound of body weight as a baseline for protein for people of all ages, Kim, tell us about how much protein you eat in a day.
I eat 200 grams of protein a day. So I often use smoothies as a way of getting a quick meal in, and I mix fruit and vegetables with them, and use them while I'm training as well.
Okay. When creatine, let's mention creatine, because again, I've mentioned creatine before. It's a supplement that I do use. Tell me about creatine. How much do you take of that?
How much do you take creatine? Do you take a spoonful?
I take 2 scoops of creatine a day.
I think that's something like 10 grams. Something I take more than that. Yeah. I take probably about 20 plus, something like that. Creatine has benefits for performance, so it makes your muscles work better and for more repetitions, and you'll get stronger faster. But it also has been shown to have cognitive benefits, so it reduces the risk of X, Y, and Z and keeps you cognitively functional.
And I think they're doing some research which is taking place at the moment, giving Alzheimer's patients creatine.
Ah, okay, for the brain benefits. That's incredible, isn't it? So
this is me and my GB kit.
I don't know how much you're squatting there.
117.
17.5.
That's a great picture, isn't it?
Yeah. So in this photo, this was the first time Mum deadlifted 150 kilos. It was quite a special day, really.
Wow.
150 is quite the landmark. And in this picture, you weighed 60?
Yes.
Yeah, 60 kilos. And so I think this is my only contribution to this whole thing, I think. So
to the photo gallery.
Yeah, so in this picture, I'm lifting 300 kilograms.
Wow. And a deadlift, you literally pick that bar up and then gently put it down again.
Yes.
Pretty much there. And then here's Mum's.
This is British
record.
Very proud of.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And when is the next competition? Look at all these. Look at all these.
World Championships in
Ships in
South Africa.
8 weeks or so.
And I came third last year in the World Championships. And this here are my
Beautiful collection of medals.
various sort of European, world masters. That's my gold medal for the deadlift.
They should be in a locked cabin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one was
Amazing.
my bronze medal for overall. So, yeah.
Fantastic. The key message that I hope that you've gained from today's interview is that strength training is attainable and transformative for literally anybody at any age. It's not about becoming a competitive lifter. It's about staying strong and healthy and independent. So if you've enjoyed this video, please comment below. Please tell me about your own strength training experience or lack thereof. Let's get a conversation going, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this. And also check the description for, I'm going to include some links to a PDF on how to get started with strength training if you are a complete beginner, and also the shake companies, the protein powder companies that produce those lovely, clean, organic protein shakes. And if you enjoyed this video, you might like to watch one of these two next. Meanwhile, stay strong, nourish, don't punish. Thank you for watching, and I will hopefully see you next time. Bye for now.